Om Agyanidmirandhasya Gnananjana Chakshuranitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Sthatamena Bhudayasanda Paradama Indra Devam Shri Guru Shri Taparakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sadrajatam Sadhana Advanatam Ramasajivam Sadhvedam Samadutam Parijan Setam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahaganavita Shri Vishakam Shya Namam Vishpadaya Krishna Pristhan Chaitanya Bhakti Radha Swami Dhamma Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pashta Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram. Reading from Prabhupada, Śrīla Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta, Volume 2, Chapter 42. Developing Māyāpur. Māyāpur, June 1st, 1973. Please let me know if my audio is clear. You can also see the text.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Although the Māyāpur building was not yet completed, Prabhupada had come there to reside. He took two adjoining rooms, one as his study and one as his bedroom on the second floor. Meanwhile, construction work continued in the temple room and in other parts of the building. On Prabhupada's first day there, a storm struck with massive black clouds and high winds. The storm was brief, however, and damage was minimal. I have just now come to Māyāpur and I am very hopeful to regain my strength and health on account of being in this transcendental atmosphere. Every moment we are passing here in great delight. In the evening, the temple pujari Jananivas would come to Prabhupada's room with a clay pot of red coals and frankincense and fan the frankincense until the room was filled with smoke. This was to drive out insects, but Prabhupada also considered it purifying. Although he was sometimes disturbed by the workers hammering, he found the atmosphere otherwise peaceful. Only a few devotees were staying there, and Prabhupada gave his attention to translating or to speak with guests and to devotees in charge of developing his Māyāpur center. He would express his desires, especially to Bhavananda Maharaj and Jayapatak Maharaj, and worked his will through them. The devotees living in the building with Prabhupada considered themselves menial servants in Prabhupada's personal house. Of course, all the buildings in ISKCON belong to Prabhupada, yet in Māyāpur that sense was intensified. Generally, the devotees in each particular center would raise money to support their center, but Prabhupada personally took charge of getting funds for Māyāpur. He had begun a Māyāpur Vrindavan Trust fund of donations from his disciples and interests from bonds and security deposits. If money was misspent, energy misused, or the building damaged in any way, Prabhupada would become very concerned. Now that he was personally on the scene, he often walked up about giving detailed instructions and demanding the discrepancies be corrected. The pink and reddish building was like a huge transcendental ship, and Srila Prabhupada as captain would walk the wide verandas, giving strict orders to all mates for keeping everything ship-shape. On one day, Prabhupada was walking on the veranda near his room. The rooms were locked, and as Prabhupada walked alone, he would open the window shutters and look in. Suddenly, he turned to Shatadhanya, who waited on call nearby. The fan is going on inside, and this room is empty and locked. Prabhupada said, "Who has done this?" Shatadhanya didn't know. "Whoever has done this," Prabhupada said, "is a rascal. He should know he is a rascal." For 2 days after, Prabhupada continued to refer to the incident with disgust. One day, after a huge wind and rainstorm, water covered the 12-foot wide marble veranda outside Prabhupada's room. Bhavananda Goswami, taking a large squeezy devotee had made, began cleaning the marble floor, and Srila Prabhupada came to his door to watch. "This is the way to clean marble," Prabhupada said. "Don't polish it with wax, but just keep plenty of fresh water and every day in the morning wipe it off. In this way, the marble will become naturally polished and will shine like glass." Prabhupada felt affection and deep gratitude for those devotees dedicating their lives to the Māyāpur project. One night, he called Bhavananda to his room and began asking him about the devotees. Suddenly, Prabhupada began crying. "I know it is difficult for all you Western boys and girls," he said. "You are so dedicated serving here in my mission. I know you cannot even get prasadam. When I think that you cannot even get milk and that you have given up your opulent life to come here and you do not complain, I am very much indebted to all of you. Bhavananda. The marble workers lived in some chatai house just right near the construction site. There was a hand pump just outside the building, and that's where we took our bath and where the workers got the water for the cement. Some distance off were two toilets, one for the men and one for the women. It was just two holes in the ground, and each hole surrounded by a chatai wall. The storms and the rain would come, and we would have to sludge through the mud in the fields to go to the toilets. There were snakes all over the place. It was wild. It was a construction site. No one lives on a construction site, but we did. Srila Prabhupada made us move in there. It was good for us. No bathrooms, nothing, just open floors with concrete. Although the devotees endured the austerities of living at the Mayapur Center construction site, they sometimes felt it was too difficult. But Srila Prabhupada never considered it difficult, and he would encourage the devotees. Mayapur is so wonderful, you can live on the air and water alone. Bhavananda, we were able to face up to so many difficulties because we just took it as our order from Srila Prabhupada. There was no conception of ever living. What else would I do? This was my order. Take Mayapur. I am giving you Mayapur. Take it, develop it, and enjoy it. There was no question in our minds of going somewhere else. The surrounding grounds were rice fields, and to get the temple building from the entrance of the property a distance of more than 200 yards, devotees would have to walk on paths made by ridges of earth that separated one rice field from another. The kitchen, which was made of tarpaulin and bamboo, was located near the entrance to the property. The devotees had to live without electricity much of the time since the power supply was often cut off. They would use a kerosene lamp at night, and Prabhupada said the lamps should be taken apart every day and the wicks trimmed and the glass washed. In the future, he said, you should grow castor plants and crush the seeds and take the oil for burning. Prabhupada told the devotees how to build simple dwellings. He also wanted them to build a wall with a gate along the front of the property. They should build small rooms, hutments, he called them, against the wall. Devotees could stay in these simple cottages. They should plant coconuts and banana trees. Raising the money, buying the land, arranging for workers and material, it had been an arduous struggle replete with bureaucratic delays, forms, fees, supply shortages, and the like. Prabhupada would not tolerate any carelessness or waste. The building, which was turning out to be so artistic, substantial, and useful, was actually a gift from Lord Krishna. So to live here in Krishna's building was to reciprocate lovingly with the Lord. The devotee should think of serving Krishna, not of becoming comfortable and forgetting the purpose of both the building of life. Sorry, both the building and of life. The slamming of doors, although seemingly a minor fault, greatly disturbed Srila Prabhupada. It symptomized carelessness and misuse, and Prabhupada said the sound cracked his heart. One time Prabhupada came out of his room and called out, who is that slamming the doors? No one knows from where this building has come. You take it for granted that it is here, but no one cares. More often, however, Srila Prabhupada displayed a rose-like softness and intimate, informal, and affectionate nature. The holy Dham of Mayapur was the spiritual world. Goloka Vrindavan. So the devotees there were living with Prabhupada in the spiritual world. More than most any other places in the world, the devotees living in Mayapur knew they could walk into Prabhupada's room and see him. He sometimes even walked into their rooms. While they were working, reading, or talking, he might suddenly walk in and speak with them, asking how they felt and how they were adjusting to living in India. It is difficult living here, he would ask. It is difficult living here? He would ask. I think India is too hot. What do you think? Even with the building incomplete, many guests were coming, especially to talk with Prabhupada, who patiently spent many hours each day speaking about Krishna consciousness with guests who came to inquire about his movement or who came only to talk about themselves and their own philosophy. Sometimes he would remark that an individual had wasted his time, but he never stopped anyone from seeing it. One wealthy Hindu man, Mr. Brijratan Mohatta, and his wife, a daughter of multi-millionaire R.D. Birla, visited Prabhupada from Calcutta. Srila Prabhupada took care in properly hosting his guests and he personally reviewed the menu and briefed his disciples on serving Mr. Mohatta and his wife. Offering prasadam was an important part of Vaishnava etiquette, and Srila Prabhupada always stressed that the devotees immediately offer prasadam to visitors. You should always be able to offer water, hot puris, and eggplant bhaji and sweets, Prabhupada said. Even when guests appeared shy, Prabhupada would insist that they take a full meal. Mrs. Mohatta, even though a member of one of the wealthiest families in India, was satisfied with the simple hospitality Srila Prabhupada and his disciples offered. The room she and her husband stayed in was unfinished. The slate floors hadn't been polished, and construction work was going on all around, and the devotees could only offer them a mattress on floor with a pillow, yet they appeared to be quite satisfied and appreciative. Bhavananda. Srila Prabhupada introduced us to many of the details of Indian culture at Mayapur. He had us put down mattresses covered with sheets in his room. In 1970 in Los Angeles, he had asked me to sew sheets together to make a covering of the rug in his room. And then he had gotten down on his hands and knees right next to me, and we had smoothed out the wrinkles in the sheet. So he had us do that same thing in Mayapur, where we put mattresses from one end of the room to the other with bolsters, pillows against the wall. Now you have white sheet covers, he said, and you change these every day. When Bengali gentlemen visited Prabhupada in his room, they would sit on these mattresses around the edge of the room, their backs against the bolster pillows. It was very aristocratic. The whole mood was that he was the Mahant and the master of the Mahant, the master of the house, the Acharya, but also the aristocratic Bengali gentleman saw that he was re-establishing the old aristocratic mood from the early 1900s or 1920s. It was from Prabhupada's old days with the Mulik family, and it was rapidly dwindling. At the time, you couldn't find a semblance of old culture anywhere because all those families had become degraded and their wealth gone. When the evening's multitude of varieties of insects gathered around Prabhupada's light, he would sometimes comment on how they were such wonderful creatures of God. This little insect, he said one evening, is both pilot and flying machine in one. Here, there are hundreds of insects flying together, and yet there are no collisions. That is God's arrangement. They never crash because the super soul is present, one in every heart. Let the material scientists manufacture such a wonderful machine with built-in pilot that will not crash when one man flies, and then there are two planes. They have to be very careful. While a few devotees sat on the sheet-covered mattresses in his room, Prabhupada sat on his slightly raised asana, leaning back against a white bolster pillow. Both spiritual master and disciple enjoyed bliss in speaking and hearing Krishna consciousness. The devotees wanted to hear Srila Prabhupada's words and follow his will, and he wanted to instruct them. But these insects, Prabhupada continued, are not perfect. They are flying to the light. That also means they are attracted to death. So they are just like the materialists. The materialists are building skyscrapers, yet they don't know what will happen to at death. Henry Ford and other had their death also. They are like these small insects. In the morning, we simply find heaps of them all dead. Often, while Prabhupada was talking in his room, the lights would suddenly go out and devotees would bring in kerosene lamps. And each night, while Prabhupada was speaking, the pujari would come, filling the room with frankincense smoke. Ghee lamps faintly illuminated the large teak wood bas relief carving of Radha and Krishna on the wall opposite Prabhupada's desk. During this summer visit, Prabhupada further revealed his vision for ISKCON's Mayapur development. The devotees were already aware that the plan was vast and would cost millions of dollars. They now had one building, but this was only the beginning. In the total plan, this building was almost insignificant. Prabhupada spoke about a colossal temple, its great dome rising above a transcendental city. This Māyāpur Chandroya Mandir would house the greatest planetarium in the world, depicting the universe as it is described in the Vedic literature. To execute such a project, Prabhupada wanted to train his disciples in the Vedic arts now dying in Bengal. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had been greatly interested in using dioramas to depict the Leela of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, and now Prabhupada wanted his own disciples to learn the art by studying under local Mayapur artists. In June, Bharadraja, Adideva, Murthy, and Isana arrived to begin learning the art of doll making. Prabhupada also wanted a disciple to learn to make mridangas, and a potter began coming every day to teach Ishana how to mold and fire the clay shells. The devotees converted Prabhupada's original straw cottage into a workshop, and Prabhupada began inviting other disciples to come to Mayapur. Mayapur is already wonderful, being the transcendental birthplace of Lord Krishna. By utilizing Western talents to develop this place, certainly it will become unique in the world. Mayapur city, Prabhupada said, would be the fulfillment of desires of previous acharyas. The city would grow to a population of 50,000 and would become the spiritual capital of the world. With its gigantic temple in the center and separate quarters for Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudras, the city would be a model for all other cities. The day would come when the world cities would be ruined and humanity would take refuge in cities modeled after Mayapur. The development of Mayapur would mark the beginning of a Krishna conscious world. Thus, the influence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would increase and his prediction would manifest. In every town and village, my name will be chanted. Oh. Prabhupada said that Mayapur should eventually become more easily accessible by bridge from Navadvip, by motor launch up the Ganges from Calcutta, and from all parts by air. In Bengal, millions were by birth followers of Lord Chaitanya, and they would recognize and take up Krishna consciousness as the pure form of their own culture. There is so saying, when what Bengal does, the rest of India follows. So if Bengal became reformed and purified by Krishna conscious example of American Vaishnavas, then all India would follow. And when all India became Krishna conscious, the whole world would follow. I have given you the kingdom of God, Prabhupada said to his Mayapur managers. Now take it, develop it, and enjoy it. Throughout the month of June, Prabhupada continued to live happily and peacefully in the not yet completed building of Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. Although he had been ill with a cough since Los Angeles, a cough he had been unable to cure while traveling in the West, on coming to Mayapur, his health had recovered. In Mayapur, I am much improved from how I was in Los Angeles. The great advantage here is that there is always open air and a good breeze, which is naturally very good for any breathing difficulties. Certainly, Mayapur is by far a better place than Los Angeles because you can enjoy the free air here. The climate is not too hot but a little moist with humidity, but on the whole, it is very pleasing. Our building is more super excellently situated, and it is experience of many respectable outsiders that while the outer atmosphere is unbearably hot, in our building it is pleasing. Prabhupada praised the constant pleasurable breezes that pass through the building, and he called them Vaikunta breezes. Sometimes, however, a violent storm would suddenly appear. Although severe, these storms were also beautiful with continuous lightning like neon lights filling the sky. One day a storm arose and the winds began to howl through the building. Noticing that Prabhupada's door and windows were open, Satadhanya rushed into the room and began frantically closing them. But Prabhupada, seated at his desk, said, "Stop, leave all the windows open." Prabhupada Satadhanya protested, "The storm is here. Just leave them open," Prabhupada said. As the wind rushed through his room at more than 50 miles an hour, Prabhupada smiled. "There is no place in the world like this," he said, his saffron robes billowing. Prabhupada stood on the roof of his Mayapur building looking over to the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu less than a mile away. Actually, he said to Bhavananda Maharaj, their claim to the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not very important. Is Krishna famous for having been born in Mathura? No, he is famous for his activities. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not famous for having been born in Mayapur, he is famous for his activities. For his Sankirtan preaching, this Mayapur Chandroya Mandir is the preaching center of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, I want a place that is so attractive because of the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that everyone will come here. While in Calcutta, before coming to Mayapur, Prabhupada had called several senior disciples into his room. I have had many requests, he had said to them. to translate Chaitanya Bhagavat, but I am going to translate the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita. Is that all right? Oh yes, Prabhupada, Bhavananda Goswami had replied. That's wonderful. Decades ago, Prabhupada had written essays based on Chaitanya Charitamrita, and over the years, he had translated some of these verses and written purports to them. Then in America in 1968, he has completed teachings of Lord Chaitanya, a summary study based on certain important passages of Chaitanya Charitamrita. During his stay in Mayapur, however, he began a translation commentary of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Chaitanya Charitamrita, beginning with the seventh chapter. As he progressed, he found a wonderful momentum and said he would publish a volume starting with chapter 7 for Lord Chaitanya's appearance day in March. Deciding to complete the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, he suspended his work on Srimad Bhagavatam. In one of the first verses of 7th chapter, Krishnadas Kaviraj states, "Let me offer my obeisances to Lord Sri Krishna, who has manifested himself in 5 as a devotee, expansion of a devotee, incarnation of devotee, pure devotee, and devotional energy." Prabhupada wrote that the only way for people to be elevated in love of Krishna in the age of Kali is by mercy of Panchatattva, or Lord Chaitanya in his form of 5 personalities. One should offer obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting Panchatattva mantra, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda. This mantra should be recited before one chants the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are 10 offenses in chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Prabhupada wrote, but these are not considered in chanting the Panchatattva Maha Mantra. One must first take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, learn the Panchatattva Maha Mantra, and then chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Verse after verse of 7th chapter confirmed the essential principle of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission and attested that he was teaching exactly after the method advised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The characteristics of Krishna are understood to be a storehouse of transcendental love. Although that storehouse of love certainly came with Krishna when he was present, it was sealed. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his own associates, the Panchatattva, they broke the seal and plundered the storehouse to taste transcendental love of Krishna. The more they tasted it, the more their thirst for it grew. Sri Panchatattva themselves danced again and again, and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of Godhead. They danced, cried, laughed, and chanted like madmen and in this way they distributed love of Godhead. In commenting on these verses, Prabhupada wrote, the present Krishna consciousness movement follows the same principle, and therefore simply by chanting and dancing we have received good responses all over the world. It is to be understood, however, that this chanting and dancing do not belong to this material world. They are actually transcendental activities, for the more one engages in chanting and dancing, the more he can taste the nectar of transcendental love of Godhead. By the phrase Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada spoke not only of his own disciples and his Krishna consciousness society, but also of the movement inaugurated by Lord Chaitanya. Just as the original personality of Godhead and the deity of Krishna in the temple were the same, so the movement of Lord Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu, and Prabhupada's Krishna consciousness movement were identical. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associate did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor were such distribution should or should not take place. They made no condition. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. For Prabhupada, Śrīla Prabhupada, this was directly confirmed the instruction he had received from his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, that people of all births could become Vaishnava, Brahmana, Sannyas. Here was direct evidence from the scripture, yet Prabhupada, like his own spiritual master, had often received criticism from the caste cautious Brahmanas of India. With the proof in hand, Prabhupada now challenged his envious critics. There are some rascals who dare to speak against the mission of Lord Chaitanya by criticizing the Krishna conscious Americans as Brahmanas and offering them sannyas. But here is an authoritative distributing the recipient are Europeans, Americans, Hindus, Muslims, etc. The Krishna consciousness movement should be spread wherever possible, and one should accept those who thus become Vaishnavas as being greater than Brahmanas, Hindus, or Indians. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided that his name be spread in each and every town and village on the surface of the globe. Therefore, when the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spread all over the world, should the should those who embrace it not be accepted as Vaishnavas, Brahmanas, and Sannyasis? These foolish arguments are sometimes raised by envious. Where is that? Ooh. These foolish arguments are sometimes raised by envious rascals, but Krishna conscious devotees do not care about them. We strictly follow the principles set down by the Panchatattva. Another criticism Śrīla Prabhupada encountered was that his emphasis on proselytizing was actually alien to Indian spirituality. Even Prabhupada's godbrothers had occasionally made such remarks. More often, however, the sentiment came from the impersonalists who argued that people should be left to conceive of religion in their own ways. Religion, being an internal spiritual affair, should not be propagated by zealous evangelism, preaching, and conversion, they said, were for the Christians, not for followers of Indian religion. In the 7th chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi-Lila, however, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reveals his heart and emotions as the ideal preacher. Although the members of Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed the content, there was no scarcity. For this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. The flood of love of Godhead swelled in all directions, and thus young men, old men, women, and children were all immersed in that inundation. The Krishna consciousness movement will inundate the entire world and drown everyone, whether one be a gentleman, a rogue, or even lame, invalid, or blind. When the first 5 members of Panchatattva saw the entire world drowned in the love of Godhead and the seed of material enjoyment in the living entities completely destroyed, they all became exceedingly happy. The more the 5 members of Panchatattva caused the rains of love of Godhead to fall, the more the inundation increased and spread all over the world. This was Srila Prabhupada's spirit in training young men and women in the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, and he was offering these words of Lord Chaitanya to strengthen all the Lord's devotees. The members of Krishna Consciousness movement should be confident that by preaching purely, they would meet with success. Prabhupada was confident. Here were the words of Shastra, words spoken by the Supreme Person of Godhead, and Prabhupada's personal experience confirmed the same. Thus, he could write, our Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly and no one provided for our livelihood. But at present, we are spreading hundreds and thousands of dollars all over the world and the movement is increasing more and more. Although jealous persons may be envious, if we stick to our principles and follow the footsteps of Panchatattva, this movement will go on unchecked by imitation Swamis, sannyasis, religionists, philosophers, or scientists, for it is transcendental to all material consideration. Therefore, those who propagate the Krishna consciousness movement should not be afraid of such rascals and fools. The verses of the 7th chapter describe a worldwide inundation of Krishna consciousness. Thus, the objections that Europeans and Americans could not become Brahmanas or sannyasis would be swept away as Lord Chaitanya's mercy flooded the entire world. Nothing could check it. The word of Krishna Das Kaviraj intensified Prabhupada's desire to base his worldwide movement in the land where Lord Chaitanya appeared and began his Sankirtan movement. The Panchatattva had begun in Navadvip, and from here the waves of love of Godhead were swelling outward. In Śrīla Māyāpur, there is sometimes a great flood after the rainy season. This is an indication that from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, the inundation of love of Godhead should spread all over the world. For this will help everyone, including old men, young men, women, and children. The Krishna consciousness movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so powerful that it can inundate the entire world and interest all classes of men in the subject of love of Godhead. In the 7th chapter of Adi-Lila, Prabhupada found many other evidences authorizing ISKCON under the principles of Lord Chaitanya's teachings and activities. Krishnadas Kaviraj says that Lord Chaitanya's taking sannyas was a trick for delivering certain class of society who would otherwise not have shown his respect. Prabhupada, in his commentary, explained that he also had devised schemes for offering the benefit of Krishna consciousness to as wide as spectrum of society as possible. And he cited his acceptance of women into the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, it is a principle, he wrote, that a preacher must strictly follow the rules and regulations laid down in the Shastra, yet at the same time devise a means by which the preaching work to reclaim the fallen may go on with full force. June 27, 1973. From Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada went to Calcutta. He wrote to Tamal Krishna Goswami, there is a suggestion by Shyamasundara that I may go to London for meeting very important men there in new house given us by George. But I want to make some definite state settlements of Bombay affairs before I return to Europe or America. If there is a suitable place for me to stay for a few days in Bombay, I can do there immediately, and from there I may go to London. While considering his itinerary, Prabhupada passed some days in Calcutta Temple on Albert Road. He was very free about allowing people to see him, and his room was often filled with local Bengalis as well as his own disciples seated on the white sheet before him. In the evenings, he would go, even when it meant riding for miles through congested parts of the city, to spread an hour in someone's home, reaching Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada's sister Bhavatarini, known as Pisima to Prabhupada's disciples, would also visit the Calcutta temple to see her beloved brother and, as usual, to cook for him. One day, however, a few hours after eating her kachoris, Prabhupada felt sharp pain in his stomach. He closed his doors and went to bed. His followers became very concerned. When his servant Shrutakirti came into the room, he found him tossing. Srila Prabhupada, what's wrong? My stomach, Prabhupada replied. That coconut kachori, it was not cooked. The seizure continued all night, and several devotees continually massaged Prabhupada's body, especially his stomach. But with every breath, he would mourn. Pisima was standing by, but Prabhupada's disciple feared her presence, thinking she might want to cook something else for him, even in his illness. Prabhupada asked that the picture of Lord Nrsimha be taken from the altar and put beside his bed. Some devotees feared that Prabhupada might be about to pass away. The next morning, when the illness continued, the devotees called for local Kaviraj, Ayurvedic doctor. The old Kaviraj came and diagnosed Prabhupada's illness as severe blood dysentery. He left medicine, but it was ineffectual. Later, when Prabhupada called Bhavananda to his room and requested fried puris with a little patala, an Indian vegetable similar to a small squash, and salt, Bhavananda protested. Such fried foods would be the worst thing for him. Prabhupada said that this was the blood diarrhea dysentery cure his mother had given during his childhood. He then called for his sister and, speaking with her in Bengali, told her to prepare puri and patala. Few hours after taking the food, Prabhupada again called Bhavananda. He was feeling better. My mother was right, he remarked. A lengthy telegram arrived from Shyamasundara, glorifying the preaching opportunity that awaited Prabhupada in London, where he would be picked up at the airport in a helicopter and flown to main event, the greatest Rath Yatra ever had. The parade would proceed down Piccadilly Lane, climaxing under a large pavilion at Trafalgar Square. The telegram went on to say that millions of Englishmen, including certain very important people, were eager to see Srila Prabhupada, and that arrangements were underway for Prabhupada to instruct the Queen's eldest son, Prince Charles, in Krishna consciousness. Some of the promises were exaggerated, Srila Prabhupada knew, but his desire to preach again in England was strong. George Harrison had given the devotees a large estate 45 minutes outside of London, and Prabhupada spoke of going there and installing deities of Radha and Krishna on Janmashtami Day. Yet even now, over a month before Janmashtami, he was feeling deeply affected by Shyamasundara's invitation. Although still exhausted from dysentery, he considered flying immediately to London. Calling in those GBC secretaries and sannyasis with him in Calcutta, sitting up in bed while they sat before him on the floor, Prabhupada asked their advice. They concluded that he should go to the healthier climate, Los Angeles or Hawaii, to rest and recuperate. Prabhupada mildly agreed as his advisors decided Hawaii would be the best place, a place where the climate was ideal and where he would have few interruptions. Suddenly, however, he sat up straighter. He would return to the west, he said, but to London, not to Hawaii, and not to recuperate, but to preach. Let me strike while the iron is hot, he said. I think this is an English maxim. If you do that, then you can keep the iron in the shape. In the West, people are fed up, so we want to give them spiritual enlightenment. Prabhupada had immediately convinced his disciples with his forceful statements. There are two misleading theories in the West, he continued. One is that life comes from matter, and other is that there is no life after death. You can just enjoy this life. They say everything is matter. So as this Krishna consciousness movement grows, the communists will be curbed down. People say they are trying for unity, but they have no brains to see how this will achieve unity. They have formed a big, complicated league of nations and now United Nations, but they all fail. But the simple method of Rath Yatra all over the world it is spreading. Jagannath means Lord of Universe, so Lord Jagannath is now international God through our ISKCON. Therefore, I want to go to the West and give them these things. Although Prabhupada appeared physically fit, unfit to immediately fly to London to the active preaching that awaited him, his disciples submitted, accepting this as another miracle by Krishna. London, July 7, 1973. Paravida. It was Rath Yatra's day. I saw Prabhupada coming into the temple and he didn't look very strong. I was really amazed, but I could understand that his strength was something spiritual. Dhruvanath. At the parade site, we were waiting to receive Srila Prabhupada at Marble Arch, where the procession starts. The Vyasasana was nicely decorated, and everybody was expecting Prabhupada simply to sit on his Vyasasana on the cart and just ride through the streets, just as he had done in the other Rath Yatras. So it was to our great amazement and joy that when Prabhupada came, he refused to sit on Vyasasana. He indicated that he would dance and lead the procession. Yogeshwar. They brought stairs up so Prabhupada could mount the Ratha cart and sit down on the Vyasasana, but he waved them off and just started walking with the chariots, leading the dancing. Dhira Shanta. I twisted my ankle and couldn't walk, so I rode on the cart. Therefore, could see Prabhupada very clearly. Revati Nandan Maharaj was chanting into the microphone from the cart, but after about 15 minutes of the procession, Prabhupada told the devotees to tell Revati Nandan Maharaj and others to come down and lead the kirtan in the street with him. Revati Nandan. When Prabhupada saw his Vyasasan on the cart, he said, No, I am just a devotee. I will go on in the procession. We had a big, great kirtan. Hamsaduta led, I led, Shyamasundar led, different devotees traded off, leading this fantastic kirtan. And Prabhupada was right in the middle of kirtan with his kartal the whole time. He was dancing back and forth and jumping up and down and dancing. Rohini Nandan. The cart was going quite slow. Prabhupada walked about 20 or 30 yards ahead of the cart, leading the procession. Meanwhile, the kirtan was coming from the Ratha cart through microphones. Prabhupada called them all down and he got them all around himself and they were chanting Hare Krishna. Ever so often he would turn around and raise both his arms very majestically in the air and say, Jai Jagannath. Sometimes we would get a little further ahead, so then he would turn around and wait for the car to come on. Sometimes he was dancing and sometimes he would stand raising his hands in the air. Saradiya Dasi. Prabhupada would dance and then after a few feet he would turn around and look up at the deities with his arms raised. Then he would dance for a few moments, meditating on the deities, and then he would turn around and go on. In this way, he danced the entire way. The devotees held hands in a circle around him to protect him from the crowd. It was a wonderful transcendental affair. Prabhupada was looking up at the deities, and all the devotees were behind him. Sudar, Sudurjana, Sudurjaya. Prabhupada surprised us. We didn't know if he was sick or not, feeling weak and dizzy or not. Sometimes he looked very ill and sometimes he looked like an 18-year-old boy. He surprised us. He had his cane in his hand but raised it in the air as he danced. After a while, Shyamasundar came up to me and said, "Listen, he is not going to make it. Prabhupada is very ill. I want you to follow in a car. B. Within 30 seconds, reach so we can put Prabhupada in the car immediately." Prabhupada was going down Park Lane and from time to time he would turn back and raise his hands. He was going so fast that they couldn't pull the cart fast enough to keep up with him. He would have to wait for the cart to catch up. He would turn back, raise his hands, and say Hari Bol. Several times he did this. He was going so fast that he had to wait. The devotees were dancing, the weather was beautiful, and the crowd was wonderful. Trivanath, the passerby were rooted to the spot looking at Prabhupada. A man of that age simply dancing and jumping in the air like a young boy was the most amazing sight. And then, every 5 minutes or so, Prabhupada would turn round, look toward Jagannath. The devotees would clear the way so no one blocked his sight, and he had a perfect view of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. But after a while, the police came and motioned that we couldn't keep stopping like this. We had to keep the whole thing going because the traffic jams were becoming critical. Devotees were crying and chanting and dancing, and there was much commotion to the Kirti. When Prabhupada was dancing, the bobbies kept on coming up and looking for someone official. Finally, they came to me and said, "You will have to tell your leader to sit down. He is causing too much of a disturbance. Everyone is becoming wild and we can't control the crowd, you know." So I said, "All right," but I didn't say anything to Prabhupada. So then they came again and said, "You must tell him he'll have to sit down." So I said, "All right," and I tapped Prabhupada. The whole time he had been in ecstasy, dancing before the cart and encouraging everyone else to dance. He would motion with his hands and encourage the devotees to keep dancing. He kept the momentum of the festival. So I said, "Prabhupada, the policemen want you to sit down." They said, "You are creating havoc in the parade." Prabhupada looked at me, turned, and kept on. He completely ignored it and kept on dancing, and they couldn't do anything. Prabhupada wouldn't stop, and the police wouldn't say anything to him. Parivida. I was distributing back to Godhead magazines along the whole parade route. I was exhausted and I was having a lot of trouble keeping up with the procession. But Prabhupada was just there, and he was dancing like a young boy. I was amazed at the spiritual energy. Dhruvanath. When we came to Piccadilly Circus, Prabhupada suddenly stopped the whole procession. Piccadilly Circus, of course, was just packed with people. For about 3 minutes, Prabhupada stopped the procession, just danced and danced with the devotees all around him. Rohini Nandan. When we got to Piccadilly Circus, Prabhupada really started to dance. He was leaping off the ground. The cart was stopped. It was very similar actually to the description in Chaitanya Charitamrita of how Lord Chaitanya would lead the Rath Yatra procession. So the cart was stopped and then Prabhupada would wait for it to catch up. Yogeshwar. When we finally arrived at Trafalgar Square and Prabhupada saw the big tent and the other arrangements and the devotees had made, he held up his hands again. He had been dancing and walking the entire route of the parade. It must have been at least an hour that he had been walking and dancing all the way from Hyde Park to Trafalgar Square. Rohini Nandan. When Prabhupada got to Trafalgar Square, he immediately sat down on the plinth of Nelson's column on a little Vyasasana and delivered a lecture about the holy name of Krishna. This was directly after his marathon of chanting and dancing. The next day's papers carried favorable news coverage of the festival, and Prabhupada wrote of it to a disciple in Los Angeles. You will be glad to know that Rath Yatra in London was very successful. The Daily Guardian had a picture on the front page of our cart and stated that we were competition to the monument in the memory of Lord Nelson in Trafalgar Square. My health is good and I am taking daily walk and speaking at the class in the morning. In another letter, Prabhupada wrote, our festival here was very well received and I was so much encouraged by the whole thing that I was able to walk and dance the entire way from Hyde Park to Trafalgar Square. Srila Prabhupada settled into a regular routine at Bhaktivedanta Manor. Here at Bhaktivedanta Manor, he wrote, the place is the nicest possible. It is calm and quiet, and the village is neat and clean. Prabhupada's room on the second floor was spacious enough to seat 50 guests comfortably, and its large windows overlooked the expansive grounds. Prabhupada said that if the devotees would clean out the lake and keep up the grounds, then he would stay always at Bhaktivedanta Manor and translate here in peace. They should get some cows, he said, and use some of the extra acreage for farming. Although the devotees had not long been living in the manor and had done little to improve the building and ground, Prabhupada pointed out a place where they could one day build a 30-story temple, the grandest building in all of London. He proposed that he stay for at least 2 months and install Radha Krishna deities on Janmashtami day. He would also oversee the construction of temple room and altar. Every morning at about 6, Prabhupada would leave the manor for an hour's walk. There was no restriction as to who could join him, and sometimes as many as 20 devotees would trail behind, trying to hear anything he might say. Looking off toward the horizon, he commented that Lechmore health reminded him of Vrindavan. Lechmore Heath. Prabhupada would walk down the lane to a place called Round Bush, stroll past a wheat field, and finally return to Lechmore Heath and the manor. A local policeman had become friends with the devotees and would regularly exchange greetings with Prabhupada. Particularly, Prabhupada liked the cleanliness of the little village, and he would often point out even the smallest pieces of trash on the manor grounds. The village, he said, was much neater than American towns. Shamsundar had promised Srila Prabhupada many interested visitors, and Srila Prabhupada reciprocated, promising that as long as the interested people kept coming, he would remain in England. Each night, one or two guests, including scholars, priests, and occasional celebrities, would come and visit when Prabhupada for a couple of hours. Who would come and visit with Prabhupada for a couple of hours. Prabhupada seemed especially eager to present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness to intelligent persons. As as the world's foremost Vaishnava Parampara philosopher of Gita and the Bhagavatam, he had thoroughly realized the conclusions of the Vedic literature. He was experienced in countering all challenges and atheistic philosophies and knew what to expect from Christian, Mayavadis, atheists, and anyone. If a guest mentioned the name of a philosopher or a scholar of thought unfamiliar to Prabhupada, then Prabhupada would simply ask, what is his philosophy? Inevitably, he would recognize the new philosophy for what it was, an old familiar mundane philosophy with a new twist, perhaps easily defeated or brought to its perfection with Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was always eager to glorify Krishna and repeat Krishna's message, and with complete enthusiastic freshness, he would present again the same points he had presented many times before. He said he was like a cow that gives milk in any field. Put him in India or America or England, he would always give the same nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada's entire day, his early morning dictation of Chaitanya Charitamrita, morning walk, Bhagavad Gita lecture, talks with guests revolved around philosophy. In Scotland, when a man had challenged that God needn't be presented through philosophy, Prabhupada had replied, what do you expect me to talk? Some fairy tales? Philosophy was necessary, especially for the so-called intelligent persons whose minds raised so many intellectual doubts, and besides to always be telling others about Krishna, Prabhupada said, was a symptom of love. Moved by compassion for others' suffering, Prabhupada always spoke the message of Krishna and never tired of repeating it. He was genuinely angered by the atheistic speculators who misled the people because materialistic and impersonalistic philosophies ruined a person's chances of finding a solution to life's suffering. Whenever Prabhupada heard anyone arguing the Mayavad doctrine, he would become like fire. He could not tolerate it. he had to correct it. When after one of the Prabhupada's lectures at the manor, a boy had said he had heard someone call the chanting of Hare Krishna a little bit of a bluff. Prabhupada had replied, "Who says bluff? Who is that fool? Who is that rascal?" He had been already he had been ready to fight the atheist to glorify Krishna. These were Prabhupada's natural drives, therefore, he could go on and on without stopping. He wanted to give people Krishna consciousness. He had no other life. Even while relaxing in the privacy of his room, he always spoke of Krishna consciousness. The devotees have invited many prominent British citizens to meet Srila Prabhupada, and the responses were good. Economist Ernst Schumacher promised to visit, as he did philosopher Sir Alfred J. Iyer. When Shyamasundar informed Prabhupada that Mr. Iyer was well known, Prabhupada replied, "What is his philosophy?" "Well," Shyamasundar replied, "he doesn't believe in the existence of God." "I will give him evidence," Prabhupada replied. "I will ask him what he means by the existence of God. I will ask him to make a list of deficiencies of God's existence." Prabhupada liked to meet with philosophical men and corner them and defeat them. I'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much for joining. So, how was the session today, Mayapur?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Generally, in ISKCON, I think they say simple living, high thinking. So I think at least I got a feeling of this, the way Westerners were, kind of adjusting to, the aspects in India. And also, Prabhupada's, energy, sometimes he's like he didn't, though he was not keeping well, the energy with which he kind of, was chanting this Maha Mantra and leading things was very inspiring, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you. Others?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yes, like Prabhu said, his Prabhupada's energy was unimaginable. So even he was ill, so he was dancing like a young boy. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
no, go ahead.
yeah, and also like this, he always liked to meet the famous intellectual people and to defeat them. So yeah. Usually we see that when people get a chance to meet intelligent people, then they see that it will be challenging, but Prabhupada always enjoyed.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important that we build such an intellectual portfolio, right? When we're talking about we want to have a diversified assets. These are diversified assets because to securely preach, right, we also need to know other philosophies, at least to face. And of course, if something we don't know, ask them what are they talking about. Then it will definitely come into, because in the end, on a broader scale, they are not that many. Yeah. So then we can actually talk, or we can even ask philosophical questions when it comes to evidences. Yeah, what is the evidence that they have? So all these things we can understand, we can learn these things when we read about Prabhupada, how he was talking to all these philosophers, scholars, and priests. Yeah, so that's why reading Prabhupada's small books, right, are very, very effective. Yeah, and we see here the mood of Prabhupada in Mayapur. Yeah, so when the facilities, right? So if we see from a normal metal facility point of view, not having a proper bathroom, not having proper safety against insects, all these things, not even having uh, things established, right? Everything, still Prabhupada was having felt home to be in Mayapur. And then we are very fortunate that Prabhupada, when he was in Māyāpur, he got inspiration to write Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? So he was saying about these Panchatattva, the chapter number 7. It's so nice, very nice chapter. In that Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. So this is the verse that was what referred here, that the Lord appears in this 5 ways as the Lord's devotee, Lord's expansion, Lord's energy. So in that way, 5 ways, and also shows how important it is to chant the Panchatattva Mahamantra, so that we are protected against committing 10 offenses to the holy name. So, yeah, a tip of quality japa is also here. And then how Prabhupada, I don't know, his plans, and at his age, his health conditions, going to another country, we know how difficult it is. If we want to go from here to India, we start thinking, oh, we have to pack so many things, we have to go there, there is something. Prabhupada was not thinking inconveniences. He was seeing the preaching opportunity in London, and then there he also again enjoyed the atmosphere in manner, and everywhere he was guiding what to do. And then the historic Rath Yatra, I'm very fortunate, I participated, I think twice in this London Rath Yatra, twice or one time, I don't remember. That's why I'm familiar with this Piccadilly Circus Square, Trafalgar Square, what was that, Hyde Park, all these places. Amazing. So in just, I think you may know this, in Europe we have this one chariot where we have 3 deities, and then we pull Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra in one chariot. In London they have 3 chariots, and the 3 chariots, in front of each of the chariot there is big kirtan going on, and there is a lot of shuffling of kirtaniyas, one who plays and odd participants who pull. It's wonderful. Just imagine the festival 3 times more opulent, and it's a holiday. I wouldn't say that, but at least the streets are full of devotees and spreading. Prabhupada, before Prabhupada, he always had this. So British have come and taken so many things, but they didn't take what they need to take. And Prabhupada want to make a point that I'm coming and giving you. So that's one thing. Of course, we will read more now further, but Prabhupada is always absorbed in Māyāpur. We just read the wonderful feats of Prabhupada about Juhu temple. And yesterday, a friend of mine, he came from India. He lives in Ghaziabad, and then he was telling there is a channel, where they have like what we are having, the Publish time. They also have Nitya Krishna Das is their channel, and in that they also have some dramas. And one of the drama they made was in the temple for the struggle of Prabhupada during the Juhu temple issue. So there is, I don't know, there's ample opportunity for us to engage ourselves in services. I think we are not yet scratching so hard the surface of what actually we can offer to Prabhupada for giving us this great blessings. I mean, of course, we are trying to do our best, but we can still see how we can plan what we can do tomorrow or day after tomorrow or 1 year after or 2 years down the line, so that we can give something serious in reciprocation to what Prabhupada has done, especially to Europeans, to Americans, in one way, I don't know whether should we call it Indians. If we call ourselves as Indians, we wouldn't have followed Prabhupada. We would have just say we would have followed Americans, we would have followed Europeans. So Prabhupada coming to the West, transforming the Western world to Krishna consciousness, made us believe that this is not ordinary. This is something extraordinary. And that's why we started getting involved in this extraordinary pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. And we are touched by his mercy, and because of that we are able to relish the glorious Sri Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. Yes, anyone else want to share?
Oh, yeah, you already mentioned nice points out of this chapter. Yeah, the one thing I also liked was this, this Birla couple that they agreed to stay in such a construction site with Srila Prabhupada, so they must be impressed with Srila Prabhupada's exalted, he's knowledgeable and still he wants to propagate the Vedic culture. And
that's very, thanks for bringing that, though it is very short but very sweet, right? To help us understand that when we go to Vrindavan, we cannot expect city life, we cannot expect all the hotel facilities. We still have to walk on those muddy streets, but that's bliss. Yeah. So let's see, when we go in Govardhan, after we are dropped, right, we have to walk to the Madhavendra Puri's Bhajan Kutir, right? Mukhara, I think that is the place. And then we see here there's a lot of cow dung on the streets, monkeys. These are not what we see every day, right? But it doesn't matter, right? So when we go to the Dham, we see how rich people still they leave all those comforts, which means what we would do, even if we earn a lot of money, we would do the same thing, right? In the end, what we will do, we'll, after earning so much, what we will do is just come to this point, hey, money is not everything, we only have to take shelter of Bhagavat. That's why they went to Prabhupada, took his blessings, because ultimately blessings are the things that will come with us to next life, not the wealth. I don't know, there is yet, I think there are a lot of rockets, right? What are we calling this? Satellites, rockets going to different planets. I don't know whether the wealth will be taken there and what is the worth of it. I don't know. But the blessings we can take with us. And I see Rohan Prabhu joining. Very nice to see you. I think this is first time we are meeting. How did you find? Was it too quick for you, or was able to follow? Find it nice?
Yes, Prabhu. I think I joined a little late. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, joined a little late. My actual initiated name is Mukunda Krishnadas, but I'm known as Rohan.
Okay.
This was nice. I've been, of course, I've been following, or have been part of ISKCON for a very long time now. I think 17, 18 years already. And each and every time I listen to stories or read something new about Krishna, about Prabhupada, about how this has all come to us, it still amazes me. And this particular very small instance of Prabhupada when he's not well and still dancing in front of the Rath Yatra, that I don't think at that age, I mean, even at this age for us, we would maybe make an excuse and not go to the yatra itself, but he travels all the way to London, dances, and that shows so much about our guru and what we should learn from him.
Yeah.
That was very unique and nicely explained by you.
Yeah, Satsvarup Goswami Maharaj, yeah, very nicely wrote. When you say this, it also, yeah, Prabhupada may say that, hey, I've just started writing Chaitanya Charitamrita and it will take a lot of time. I can't risk my health. No, let me sit here, finish the whole book. Once it's done, then I'm free. No, he is ever eager in this mode of preaching. Yeah. Yeah. Just like Kadam Kanan Maharaj says, yeah, I don't have strength, but I have desire to serve. And Prabhupada, yeah, he doesn't have health. His body is very, very, I wouldn't say, delicate. Yeah, not weak. He's very, very delicate. Still, his desire pulls him all straight to that mode of complete surrender to his spiritual master, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to his preaching.
I think that shows, I mean, I'm known to comment, but it shows so much of his sadhana and what we should try to at least follow. It's definitely difficult for us, but yeah, all gurus, they set an example for us, and seeing Prabhupada as the best example that can be, I think, yeah, that this is what amazes me each and every time I listen to a narration or a story which involves Prabhupada.
Yeah, that's right. So that is also the main purpose for actually reading Prabhupada-līlāmṛta is it is full of Amrit. Yeah, the Leelas of Prabhupada. It's not like, okay, we are talking about Chaitanya Charitamrita, we are not talking about Bhagavatam, we are talking about Prabhupada. Yeah, who was there, who has demonstrated the perfect devotee of Krishna, and his disciples have imbibed the spirit of the same, dedicating life for Krishna consciousness to serve their gurus. Yeah, it is, if we can appreciate that aspect of the purpose that they have done all, and we learn, okay, we should also take it up. If we start somewhere, we can reach something. So it all, any humble start is always very nice, and that can always give us, okay. And we need nourishment. We need time to time reminders. So this kind of reading regularly keeps us connected. Yeah, by these amazing achievements of Prabhupada. Okay, thank you very much for everyone joining. Let us meet tomorrow at 7:30 with Bhagavatam. Yeah. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai, His Holiness Satsvarupa Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.